Hello, and welcome to Sunday at Bear Branch, a virtual ministry of the Churches of Christ.
As a start to the lesson this morning, I'm going to read a couple verses out of Hebrews 13, and then we'll be in Genesis 18 primarily. As the Hebrew writer begins to close his letter, he says, "Let brotherly love continue. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares." We have been studying and discussing in our lessons the matter of God's messengers, whom we refer to as angels, and trying to understand a little bit about those principalities and powers that exist beyond our normal senses, but at the same time does not necessarily mean that they are not in our presence. And so today we want to look at least one example of what the Hebrew writer tells us about entertaining angels unawares. There's a couple different reasons for the lesson. Primarily is for us to understand that angels can appear and do appear, that we see in scriptures, not as some winged creature all the time with a golden halo, but just plain old, everyday, average kind of folk. And from appearance sake, they're indistinguishable from what we would think of as normal humans. And we see that expressed perhaps its very best when we're looking here in Genesis 18:1. The Hebrew writer tells us that you could entertain an angel and never be aware of who they are unless they chose to make that known to you. And the example we're going to look at is that of Abraham, in Genesis 18. It opens by saying, "And the Lord appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door and bowed himself toward the ground." Now, when we first read this, we're already given an inside look at what's about to happen. We're told here, if you notice, and this is something we'll talk about in more depth later, but it said the Lord appeared unto him. If you look, that's capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D in the King James. In some translations, it would say Jehovah. In other translations, it might use the word Yahweh. And in that sense, we're told that the Lord appeared to him. Now, many times in the scriptures, the Lord God will speak with someone, but we never really understand that he was in a physical presence that we think of at that time. But in this particular passage and set of passages, we not only see the presence of angels, but we see the physical presence of the Lord himself. And later on we'll go into more detail, but suffice at this point, I'll just say you're talking about Jesus. John tells us that no man has seen the Father at any time, John chapter 1. That means at any time nobody saw God the Father. That's what it means. Simple English. So this isn't God the Father is manifesting himself. It is Jesus. It is the Lord as we know him, not as they necessarily knew him. But we're told that he appeared to Abraham on the plains where he was camping in his tents. Remember, Abraham was a man who was nomadic. He traveled. He didn't really have land of his own. Like many of the herdsmen and shepherds of that time, they lived in tents and they moved from pasture to different places for the animals to graze. And the image is that it is the heat of the day, so to speak, probably maybe somewhere between at least probably 12 noon, high noon, to the evening time, 3 o'clock perhaps, somewhere along that way. It was the heat of the day. It's not early morning, it's not late at night, but it's during the main part of the day. And it is part of the day which is fraught with many dangers for those who are traveling, because if you can't find water, if you can't find shade, if you overheat, we all know this past week or so, you can imagine what it would be like to stay outside and without any water for days at a time, traveling, walking. You probably wouldn't get too far before the heat and thirst and all that got to you. And so as he's sitting there in his tent door, that may seem strange, but what he's doing is he wants to look outside. He wants to see what's going on out there, but he's in the shade. Now, I guess tents didn't have a porch per se, as we think of it, a front porch. So he has the front of the tent or the tent door open, but because it's the heat of the day, he's sitting just inside the door. He can see out, but he's also protected in the shade of his tent. And as he's sitting there, we're told he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door and bowed himself toward the ground. Now, this is not because the Lord appeared to him with 2 angels. This is just the fact that it's custom of that day. It is a way of submitting oneself, if you will, to another, and the action of what he's doing is saying, you don't have anything to worry about with me. That's what he's saying. You know, he bows himself down. He puts himself in a submissive position. Today we'd shake a hand and make sure there isn't a rock in it or whatever. But in that particular time, as part of the custom, he bowed himself down. He submits or surrenders himself to them in the sense of not trying to force them or to question them or challenge them. Remember, these are strangers. And so he doesn't want to do anything. He's a stranger in a strange land. Remember, it's not his land. He's a nomad. Maybe this is somebody who has possession of the land. I don't know. But what he was thinking, he nonetheless, when he sees them, he runs out of the tent door where they're journeying. And he said, my Lord. Notice Lord in this sense is capital L, then little o, little r, and little d. This is not the same word. This is just a term of honor. It's as a servant would address the master, or someone would speak to someone in position or power. It's not using the word Lord as we see back in verse 18. But he says, My Lord, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched. Wash your feet and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will fetch a morsel of bread and comfort ye your hearts. After that you shall pass on. For therefore are you come to your servant? And they said, So do as thou hast said. So from Abraham's standpoint, we have three men which are journeying along. It's in the heat of the day. And remember, our text in Hebrews is about hospitality. In the Middle East, life and death is based upon how hospitable people would be. And even among your enemies, many times, people would show hospitality if they were asked. Normally, they wouldn't even speak to each other, but if they ask for help, it's kind of the way it works is that you provide them the things that they have need of. Because sometime you may have need of those things, and you would hope that someone else. Remember, there's not a 7-Eleven on every corner. You can't pop in the air-conditioned 7-Eleven and get you a nice cold water or a Coke or whatever it is that you want. Traveling along, people many times were subject to whoever would allow them to stay in their house or sleep on the roof in the guest area. And so as we look at this and as we think of it, we see the heart of Abraham. It's the heat of the day. He doesn't want to be out in the heat. And he sees three men walking along. That's all he sees. Three men walking along. He doesn't see three men in a fiery chariot. He doesn't see a halo around them. He doesn't see bright flashing light, and he doesn't hear the sound of thunder and roar. It's three men walking down the road. Three men traveling through. And he knows it's the heat of the day. Maybe he can see them and he sees. It's not like driving in a car, don't know what's in the trunk. It's just three men traveling along. You can pretty much tell what they have and what they don't have. And so looking up, he sees three men in the heat of the day walking along. And he's concerned about their physical safety, and he offers them a little water. Come rest under the tree. Find some shade. Sit down. I'll fetch you some water. You can wash your feet to make yourself more comfortable. And wash your feet, and I will prepare. It's the middle of the day, the heat of the day. Let's have something to eat. I'll prepare you something to eat if you will allow that. And they said, Do as thou sayest. Okay, we'll sit under the shade and we'll let you get some water. See, they had feet, or else Abraham wouldn't have wanted to fetch them water so that they could wash their feet. They had mouths, else he wouldn't have wanted to give them water or something to eat. They looked like they might be hungry, and so he was willing to feed them. In all of his actions and everything that he sees, all he sees is three men. He sees three men, just like anybody else, wandering around in that area of the country. They look like everybody else. But we know that one of them is the Lord in a physical presence, and with him are two angels. And the Lord and the two angels are on a mission, which we'll see as we kind of get on down in this. Abraham, we're told, hastened into the tent unto Sarah, and said, "Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it and make cakes upon the earth." Bread was something that pretty much was a staple food. And so every meal sometimes was just the bread with something on it, but bread was a part of the meal. And so one of the first things he asks is for his wife to take 3 measures of what we would think of as flour and to make these cakes. Not talking about cornmeal. Corn wasn't known at that time. He's talking about flour. He wants fine flour and make some nice bread, flatbread, fry bread, whatever you want to think of it as. We've all kind of seen that. And so, in addition to that, he ran unto the herd and fetched a calf, tender and good. Notice that. He didn't go find the one that was all crippled and lame and the one that was blind in one eye. He went into the herd and he found one of the nice ones. He knew, in essence, when it was prepared and when it was cooked, it would be nice and tender. They were going to be chewing on that animal for the next 3 days. He wants fine flour, fine meal. He wants nice cakes. And he wants this calf made ready for them to dress it. And we're told he took butter and milk and the calf which he had dressed and set it before them. So his servants prepared the calf. Sarah prepared the bread. And in addition to that, we're told that he took butter and milk. That's a pretty good meal. I mean, that's the kind of meal that, when company comes, you set on the table. You've got butter for your bread, you've got milk to drink, you've got the calf. And so he set it before them and stood by them under the tree. And what does it say? They did eat. Now remember, 2 angels and the Lord, and they ate. They had to have physical bodies of some type. Now I'm not saying they were necessarily human as we think of them, but they had bodies that looked human, and they were capable of processing food. It's no wonder the Hebrew writer says, be careful, because, you couldn't tell the difference between them if you saw them. Is the angel number A, B, or C? You wouldn't be able to tell the difference. You'd have to guess, and you might guess wrong. Now they're sitting there. Now you have to remember, this stuff takes some time. To dress a calf, to cook the calf, to make the bread and bake the bread and get everything all set up. So, there's a time involved in all of this. And nonetheless, they sat there under the tree, washed their feet, had something to drink, some cool water perhaps, washed their feet, rested themselves from their travels and their journey. And when Abraham set food before them, they did eat. And in the process, they said unto him, Where is Sarah thy wife? And he said, Behold, in the tent. Now, still keeping with the customs, today when company comes, everybody sits around a table and they eat, but that's not exactly the way that it worked back then. The men were there, and Sarah was in the tent, kind of waiting to see how everything was going to go. And he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life, and lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it, in the tent door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I am waxed old shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also. And the Lord said unto Abraham, Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child which am old? Here's the interesting thing. Sarah didn't laugh out loud as if somebody had told a joke. But when she heard what was said, she's inside the tent and she laughs within herself. She just thinks how ridiculous that sounds, that she'll be able to have a child. But the Lord is there. And if you ever doubt that the Lord doesn't know our hearts and He can't hear our prayers and thoughts when we offer them without doing it vocally, here's a perfect example. He couldn't see Sarah. She didn't move her lips. He couldn't tell whether she had a smile on her face with his eyes. He didn't hear her laugh because she laughed within herself. But he knew. The Lord knows. And he asked Abraham why she laughed. And then he begins, I don't know where the actual introduction came to, but in verse 13, after he makes that statement, after Sarah laughs, after all of this, it says, And the Lord said unto Abraham, again, why did she laugh? And then he asks the question of 14, is anything too hard for the Lord? Now before, he just made a general statement back in 10, I will certainly return unto thee according in the process of time, when everything is as it's supposed to be, and Sarah will have a son. And she's just listening. But then in 14 he says, is anything too hard for the Lord? And we're back to capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, which is back to Jehovah, Yahweh, whatever you look at that. And he repeats that, at the time appointed, I will return unto thee according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laugh not. For she was afraid. And he said, Nay, but thou didst laugh. If you think you can pull it over on him, it ain't going to happen. He asked why she laughed. She says, oh, I didn't laugh. I took it serious. He said, oh, I know you laughed. I know in your heart you laughed. I don't miss much. And then it says the men, that's the other two, rose up from thence and looked toward Sodom. And Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. The two men make the point of that they need to get to Sodom. It's important they get to Sodom. Remember, these are angels, because we're going to be told later on that these are angels. So we have Jesus and we have two angels which are there, and Abraham, if you're going to leave, it's usually custom, a lot of times when, people say, well, I guess we'll be going, and people say, well, I'll see you at the door. And so they go open the door. It's like, can't you open the door for yourself? Well, yeah, but it's mannerly, it's mannerly to walk out with them on the front porch. You could just say, okay, see you later, let them get up, open the door, leave, and just be at that. But it's sort of like he walks them, he opens the door, he walks them out. I know we're talking about a tent, but in our mind, it's like they said, well, we need to be going. We've got to get to Sodom, and they're heading in that direction. And so he gets up with them, and he tries to get them the things they need to help them on the way. I don't know what all that would be, but it seems to imply that they may have been offered to take some water. Would you like to take some water with you? Do you need to take some food? You want to do all these kind of things. He wanted to bring them on the way. That's what it means. When it says bring them on the way, he's not just saying that, it's over that way, pointing a finger, but he's giving them maybe some of the provisions that are left over from the meal. Would you like to take some? You want some water? Whatever it is. So it's clear that these individuals in Abraham's eyes are just like us. Now he's come to know that they're not exactly like us, but he still thinks of these people that he's interacting with as beings that need food, water, shelter, all of these. And so when we think about angels, this is not what we usually think of. It's not the way that we think of angels. And so while angels exist in a realm above, they're created above us, and they're capable of living where God is, and they're also capable of living in a physical form where we are. And they're able to manifest that body and to take that body with them whenever they go. It's not like when they're finished, somebody's standing there, they're just going to flop over dead and they're going to leave a carcass behind. So they manifest themselves as humans, they interact with them as humans, and when they leave as humans. It's not like, well, our flaming chariot is out here, it's time for us to go. No, they were just walking like normal people would, looked like they were traveling. And so as Abraham is trying to send them on their way, verse 17, there is a question which the Lord, who is there, remember there's two angels and the Lord. The Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. There's part of that, the blessing that we talk about. The blessing is to you and to your children, to those that are far off, even as many as the Lord our God should call. It's a blessing of Jesus Christ and salvation. And so the three are apparently looking as if they're going to go, but God, the Lord, Jesus, says, should I destroy Sodom and Gomorrah and not tell Abraham anything about it? It's not going to impact him directly. But seeing how Abraham will become a mighty nation, he will evolve into many different nations of people, and that all the nations of the earth will be blessed, should I let him know or should I not? He says, for I know him. And notice that, I know him. Remember, he can read your heart. He can read your inclinations. You don't even have to say it. How you feel about something. This is where it's interesting when we look at this, because God knows us. See, you don't know me, not like God knows me. You don't really know what I think or what I feel. Sometimes I may tell you certain things that I feel or think. So you don't know what goes on between my ears, and you probably wouldn't want to. But Abraham, the Lord knows. He knows what the future is going to be. He knows the end from the beginning and the beginning from the end and all the things in between. So he could have, the three of them could have just got up, left, went to Sodom and Gomorrah and done what he intended to do. But he says, I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord. That's me. That's the Lord that's there. I know, they will do that. To do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him. And the Lord said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is grievous, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it which is come unto me. If not, I will know. Now, it's interesting that God's going to come down and take a look. It's kind of the same thing that we see during the Tower of Babel. God kind of wants to get a closer look. It's like, I need to take a closer look at that. And so he comes down where they're building the tower. Here, he wants to go to Sodom and Gomorrah and literally see for himself in physical form if things are really, what he has seen, if that's the way that it is. And he wants to experience that. And Abraham drew near and said, Will thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Now, we see that he begins to talk to Abraham about what his intentions are. But he said, I know Abraham, and so he knows that Abraham will ask any questions. And so he says, peradventure there be 50 righteous within the city, without also destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are therein. So Abraham begins to barter for the city and the souls, both of the righteous and the unrighteous. Be it far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous shall be as the wicked, that be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? So he knows, he's come to comprehend what and who is there. And the Lord said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sakes. And Abraham answered and said, Behold, now I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord, which am but dust and ashes. Peradventure there shall lack 5 of the 50 righteous, without destroy all the city for lack of 5. And he said, If I find there 45, I will not destroy it. And he spake unto him again and said, Peradventure there shall be 40 found there. He said, I will not destroy it for 40. And he said unto them, O let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Peradventure shall 30 be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it if I find 30. And he said, Behold, now I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord. Peradventure there shall be 20 found there. He said, I will not destroy it for 20's sake. And he said, Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak, but this once, peradventure 10 shall be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 10's sake. And then we're told the Lord went his way as soon as he had left communing with Abraham, and Abraham returned unto his place. So the Lord went his direction, and the angels went theirs, as we're going to see. And we're out of time, but as you can see, if you want to go on, there came 2 angels to Sodom at evening. Not 3 men. The Lord has went his way. he's done what he wanted to do in interacting with Abraham. But the two angels continue on into Sodom. And as an assignment, if you want to, you can read the 19th chapter, and you'll see that when the two angels entered into Sodom, they didn't come in flaming chariots. They weren't glowing. Just two men walked into the city, the two angels that left from Abraham's. And there they find Lot, who had moved into the city, had continually pitched his tent toward the city of Sodom until he was dwelling there. And he sees two individuals coming into the city, and he knows how terrible the city is. See, we're back to hospitality again. Lot knows that strangers in the city it's not a good place. You know, why he's there, I don't know. We're told by Peter that he vexed his righteous soul day by day with the things. But Lot sees these two men come into the city, and it's going toward the evening. And this isn't a place that you want to really be at night unless you either have a place, and so he invites them into his house. Now, obviously, if they're traveling there and they have prior arrangements, all they have to do is say, oh, that's okay, we're going to be staying with so-and-so tonight. But they don't say, it's okay, we're going to be staying with so-and-so tonight. What they say is, I think we'll just find us a spot here and sleep in the street. And Lot panics, because he knows what can happen to people who don't have a good reason to be there. He knows what the city's like. And the point of all of that is that in the midst of all of this, whether it was God in the flesh, Jesus, or two angels, Abraham didn't know it, Sarah didn't know it, Lot didn't know it, the men of the city didn't know it, until they had finished the purpose and the reason for which they were sent. But ultimately ends up with Lot, his two daughters, and his wife leaving the city right before fire and brimstone fall upon it, which we are led to believe is the reason that the angels were also sent. And we don't know who all was in charge of the fire and brimstone department, but that came from somewhere. Whether it came directly from the Lord, if he's the one who sent it, or whether it came through the agency of angels or others, it doesn't clearly say. But we know that the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, and so the idea of that may be that even the Lord himself was the one who ultimately destroyed the city, as he spoke of his being the one who would or wouldn't destroy it. So angels are interesting. They can be mighty, they can be terrifying, they can come in flaming fire and fiery chariots. They can scare you so bad that you don't think you'll live through it. Or they can be the person that you pass on the street, you smile and wave, and you go your way, they go their way, and you never see them anymore. They do what they came to do. The Hebrew writer reminds us that we ought to be careful how we treat strangers, how we treat individuals in life. Because some have literally entertained angels unaware of who they invited and who they interacted with, at least until they chose to make themselves known. If you're here this morning and you're not a child of God, before you is the opportunity, believing in Jesus Christ as the Son of God, to repent of your sin, confess your belief, be baptized into Christ. Or as a child of God, not walking where you ought to be, doing the things that you need to be doing. Through repentance and prayer, you can find reconciliation.
In closing this evening, we wish to thank you again for spending your time in study with us. We hope the lesson has been uplifting and motivational. We encourage you to return again for our next lesson. Until then, may we invite you to visit our website. You will find many study opportunities. Our resource page has links to the Gospel Broadcasting Network, a 24/7 station with many great Christian programs and speakers. In Search of the Lord's Way, with Brother Phil Sanders. We have 2 links for Bibles and downloadable software. If you are looking to really expand your knowledge, perhaps you might like to try World Video Bible School, a college-level learning site free of charge. So, until next time, may God bless and keep you in His care as we walk together in His truth. And remember, as always, the churches of Christ salute you.